And then there was one, the final weekend for regular season play in 2023. After 5 hard-fought months, we've reached the end. Very fitting that it just might come in super dramatic fashion, huh? In the West, the Gladiators, Justice, and NYXL fight for their playoff lives, while the East is going to continue week 2 of their 3-week knockout extravaganza. It's not a super long week, and not every game is all that important, but there's still a bunch on the line here. Here's my preview of Week 6 and who I've got winning. Starting out west, we have important game numero uno, NYXL versus Vancouver Titans. The Titans look to seal up the 5 seed, while the NYXL look to clinch a play-in berth. It's win and you're in for these guys, and the Titans, luckily for them, didn't exactly blow us away last week, so there might actually be a pretty solid chance for New York to control their own destiny and win this match. You can use that double flex support and natural hit scan to your complete advantage. But even so, I'm not totally convinced they've got this. For one, NYXL didn't exactly look amazing against the Gladiators, and two, despite losing, the Titans did give Toronto a pretty solid fight. Far as I'm concerned, New York are probably the real underdog. Titans certainly aren't a bad matchup at all given the circumstances, but maybe there's some worry when it comes to the execution. Titans certainly are more trustworthy in the clutch. Organization tends to kill this New York team, and the Titans definitely have that, so my pride is going to be a 3-2 Titans victory. And let's be honest, aside from them not being that great, I don't know if they have an answer for Sugar Free. And if NYXL end up losing this, suddenly their fate this season may come down to the next game, aka Gladiators versus Boston. This is it, Glads fans. Your team is hours away from missing the playoffs potentially for the first time in franchise history. To avoid this fate, it's gonna start with a win against the Uprising. The question is, do they have what it takes to pull off this kind of miracle? I mean, if last week was a sign of anything, they're at least locked in for this situation. The DPS look pretty comfortable. Marvel and Cal, much improved. The new meta seems to be an answered prayer of sorts. Thing is, Boston are multiple tiers ahead of NYXL. It's a very different beast, and you can pray that they won't try since there's not actually much to play for here, but something tells me they're kinda pissed off after losing to Florida, and maybe they don't want to run into the Glads later down the line in play-ins, so they'll try and knock them out now. How organized can the Gladiators look against a top team with all this pressure? They might have shown a bunch of different looks to mild success last week, but so did the Mayhem, and Boston nearly beat them. I desperately want the Gladiators to win this game because, you know, Kevster simply deserves that much at the very least, but Boston may be a little out of their reach. Potentially, they'll show some better flexibility, just knowing how much Boston like Monkey, but Boston's players are pretty comfortable themselves right now, and of course have a higher ceiling. That support line in particular could be a real problem for just an okay Glad's backline. The triple threat where they can go for double flex or Lucio may be a little much for the one-dimensional Glads. Kevster, Kai, and Cal are gonna have to play the games of their lives to even have a chance. It seems like there's a lot pitted up against them, and the expectations feel a little too high. It just feels too good to be true. I say the Glads are gonna strike early, but then Boston take over the rest of the way through and take this series in 4 maps. Glads tend to win when I pick against them though, so I am hoping for some kind of reverse psychology, but things are not looking great. Florida versus the Valiant. Not much to say with this one. Florida technically have a chance to get the 1 seed if Atlanta lose, so they're definitely going to try, and this is also the Valiant's final game, so they might just go out in like some kind of blaze of glory. Maybe Seeker has an out-of-body experience, and people are going to argue because Valiant played them close last time that this one may also be good, and while I think that is valid, the Mayhem are obviously a drastically different team compared to that particular match, which was multiple months ago. They seem to have a better grasp and direction and are a lot more confident in the present day, and they're just gonna play more things that are appropriate to play, you know? That was part of their issue the last time, and it's doubtful they'll fall into that same trap. gap. As cool as it would be to see Valiant go out like champs, Mayhem are simply the better team in every way, and you don't expect them to mess this up. Starting off Sunday in the West, the Justice play Toronto Defiant in what may or may not end up being a must-win game. If Gladiators somehow pull off an upset, things could get very dramatic for Justice and NYXL, and Justice definitely have a tough opponent on their hands. Toronto are as happy as can be. For the first time, maybe in their entire existence, they're not mid. No Winston, no Sombra, and they're jumping for joy. They broke through the barrier and finally reached Super Saiyan. Hydron Hitscan, Kalu, Jarissa Sig, Majed Ilari, Defiant can play up to their real strengths and break out all their favorite tricks. With Justice, I don't really know if I'm getting the same vibes. They're still a little behind clearly when it comes to experimentation and what their true comfort is, and most of their game plan, at least for now, revolves around Alpha Yi. For comparison's sake, Defiant have more game breakers in this scenario, particularly at tank and support. You know, like when Sigma is viable like this, Kaluj is an absolute nightmare to deal with, even for high-level teams, and in general, he can also just play a good Queen and Orisa, and while I think Mirror is a pretty balanced player, I don't know if there's a single hero that he can take over in the same light as Kaluj here. In support, I think Defiant are just a bit more versatile because of the double flex support option. Defiant seem better prepared for what's in front of them. They've been waiting the entire year for this moment, and I'm starting to believe they just might run away with it. Justice always have a chance, just because they're a pretty good team, but in my opinion, Defiant are going to overwhelm them in a relatively short series. Next is London versus Houston. Not much going on with this one. Houston have absolutely nothing to play for, they're locked into the 3 spot, and London at best could possibly move up or down a little bit with their seeding in the play-ins. But generally, it's a relatively unimportant game, and I suspect that Houston bare minimum will treat it as such. Maybe I'm overthinking things, but I don't see why Houston need to try it all here. They literally aren't playing an important game until September. They can shift their focus to rest and preparation. There's a genuine chance that this game is going to end up being kind of close. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if the Spitfire get the dub. It gives off major sandbag vibes, but just because it would be a lot funnier if the Outlaws actually won while maybe memeing around with Violet's Kiriko again, let's go 3-2 Houston. Give me all the memes. And lastly, the final game of Western regular season play is Atlanta versus the Shock. So pretty much, Reign have to try. Mayhem, because they play the Valiant, could very easily snag away the top seed if the Reign decide to not try. So in a way, it's kind of a must-win game. And for the Shock, they could possibly slide all the way up to 5th or go down multiple spots in the play-ins, so trying is definitely advised. When it comes to this matchup, I don't know how I'm feeling about the Shock, as they've mostly cashed in on weak opponents as of late, and obviously we know the Reign are one of the contenders. It's a bit hard to trust the Shock knowing that they've had a very fortunate schedule. Also, I don't know how much I believe in their specific strats that they ran against Vegas against a team that actually knows what they're doing. Reign generally might run them out of the building cause better composition choice plus obvious support gap. And if the Shock go for the proper support strat again, I don't know how their DPS line is going to manage against Stalker and Lip. Shock just aren't trustworthy in my eyes, so I went with an Atlanta 3-1. Shock generally haven't played a lot of good teams, and the Reign have lots to play for, so I'd expect them to take care of business as the obviously superior squad. With that, the West is complete. If things go how I expect them to, then NYXL and Justice will punch their tickets to the play-ins with a Gladiators loss to Boston, and that'll be that. On the eastern side of things now, this week decides who ends up going to the grand finals from the winners finals, and then who ends up playing in the losers finals next week. In bracket A, I'm stepping away from my original prediction last week. I said the Spark were taking this thing, and that I believe in them in the clutch, but that is before I knew that Junker Queen would be this relevant. With that critical information, plus the DPS picks and the Bliss Lucio, Dallas are looking scary. And against a dive-happy team like the Spark, they might get run over. I've made the mistake of doubting the Spark in the past, like for the past 3 tournaments, but this time around, it really has nothing to do with them and their abilities, but more so the Dallas Fuel. When Hanbin has access to his Junker Queen, they're just at a different level of play. And like, Sparkle can double duty on Symmetra Genji, 2 heroes he's quite known for. The Fuel have a lot of carries in this scenario, and they're getting rid of their main weaknesses, aka Winston Sombra. Without that, they're a lot more like their old selves, just without the goated backline. And you sure as hell don't need a goated backline for Monk Langsa. MCD and Bliss on the Lucio is more than enough. So long as Dallas don't play the Sparks game, there's reason to feel pretty confident. Now, with that said, I still feel like it'll be a close game, and the Spark will give them hell. Shy and Leave at full potential is absolutely terrifying, but I think Fuel are going to find a way to single out Gushue, and that'll lead to the Spark's collapse. I could be making a mistake doubting the Spark yet again, but after last year, you can't catch me dead doubting the Hanbin Queen. So yeah, Dallas await the Spark or a Contenders team in the winner's final. In all likelihood, it should be a rematch versus the Spark, and in my opinion, Spark will play Dreamers in that loser's final because they're typically a pretty clutch team and the most proven of the Contenders teams in this group. In Group B, things are a bit less exciting. Infernal are simply at a different level compared to the rest of this group. O2 might be a decent challenge, cause Who Are You and Protect look pretty good, but Infernal are just too strong. They boast a lot of variety with their composition choice, and their team play is very strong. And because of that, it might be a little hard for Who Are You to break through their defenses. He can't kill 4 every single fight with Blade like we've been seeing. It's just not gonna happen, and if that can't happen, it's hard to imagine they win. As for the rest of the lot, I'd say Charge and Dragons are most likely to go bye-bye. The Charge are just dead to everyone, you know? Uninspiring and completely lost in the sauce. Maybe they could take a book out of SBG's book with Wrecking Ball, and that might help a little, but I don't think it'll be enough. There's far too many holes with the current roster, and they're just not good enough. Dragons versus SBG and their rematch might be a bit more interesting. There's a chance for revenge off short notice here. Learn from your mistakes and make changes with a short-term memory. But with what I saw last week, I don't know how much I trust the Dragons. Something tells me it's not meant to be. SBG are super chaotic. Even Soul Infernal dropped a map to them. If the best team in the region was required to use some of their brain power, what does that say about the Dragons' chances? I just have this bad feeling that they like the Winston a little too much, and let's be honest, SBG winning would be a lot more fun as they give off that chaotic Chundu vibe that we've greatly missed. Genuinely, SBG might take it all the way to the losers finals on their wackiness alone. It's a relatively weak lower bracket, so it would not be very shocking. However, I believe the Dynasty will take care of them if they get by the Charge. They may not be very good at Junker Queen, but one thing they do know is Wrecking Ball. It's Belos Ria's specialty, so they may even try to match Sinpriza on it. I think they're a good matchup for the Dynasty, and one that they should feel favored in. They'll feel a bit more comfortable. But cause Seoul aren't exactly trustworthy, and SBG are kinda hard to anticipate, this could probably be a really close 5-map banger that could go either way, which means that in the end, we might be left with a dramatic Seoul versus O2 rematch next week. Prophet and Lee Soo-min may have the chance to do the funniest thing ever, and I'm all for it. And that's pretty much my thought process on week 2 of the Eastern Knockouts and where I'm going with my Preds. Seems pretty predictable, at least in one bracket, but down below for both sides could get pretty chaotic, and that Spark Dallas game could be pretty interesting as well. I wonder who prevails. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And as we reach the end of today's video, I'd appreciate it if you could drop a like and subscribe to the channel if you're new. It helps out the channel tremendously. And be sure to give your Preds and things you're most excited for about the upcoming weekend as well. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I appreciate your support a lot, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.